And welcome to your Friday One show live on BBC One and iPlayer with Gethin Jones.
And Alex Scott. Now, tonight we've got a musical legend with us, someone who's kept us entertained for an incredible 65 years. So Cliff Richard shares the stories behind the songs that have become the soundtrack of his life, from Elvis to Elton John and many more in between.
I'm already dancing along.
She's
Plus,
swaying.
I'm swaying. James Blunt will be performing his fantastic new song, which so many of you have connected with and was inspired by his own very personal story.
Very moving, isn't it? And with Remembrance Day approaching, Angelica Bell has been learning about a fantastic new project aimed at keeping soldiers' stories alive for future generations.
And as always, we want to hear from you. So if you have a question for Sir Cliff and James or want to comment on anything throughout the show tonight, please do get in touch.
It will be lovely to hear from you. Now, all this week, you've been getting behind our Be Scam Safe campaign, and how convincing it is too. Yeah, it's quite remarkable, actually. And hopefully the Be Scam Safe campaign, which we've been doing on the BBC all week, will help lots of people. And the key messages are very much don't feel pressured and report, and we'll stick it to the scammers.
Yes. Well said, Gethin.
Thank you. I was getting into it. I've been doing it all week on Morning Live, and I've been very passionate about it. It's
Right, we're going to move on from
yeah.
that.
Don't start me on it.
It's time to welcome tonight's guest. The first is one of the biggest selling artists of all time in the UK, and the other made chart history when he released his debut album.
Before we chat to Sir Cliff Richard and James Blunt, here's a reminder of just some of their hits.
Please welcome Sir Cliff Richard and James Blunt.
That's a collab I'd like to see. Hello, James. Good to see you. Welcome, welcome.
Sir Cliff, welcome.
Nice to see you. Welcome. Lovely stuff. Completely in sync as you walked in there. James, we're sending you back outside, actually, at the end of the show for a performance we're very much
where it's freezing,
thank
you.
Is it? You can warm us all up. Sir Cliff, lovely to see you. You've written a memoir. You've written about the songs that have defined your life. And we're sat here thinking, where does Sir Cliff Richard start with that?
Elvis Presley.
Ah.
There was a tsunami of rock and roll that came over from the States, and none of us had heard anything like it. And even when I first heard Elvis, we thought, well, from which planet did this person arrive from? And so it just grew and grew. And almost anybody that is not American, but is a singer or in a band, would be because of what came from America. It'll always be the fatherland of rock and roll.
There was one song in particular that you heard from Elvis that sort of changed your life in a way.
Yes. We were walking, my drummer and another guitarist and myself were walking about downtown in Chessington, Hertfordshire, and this car stopped outside a shop. The windows were down, the engine was running, and the radio was on. He went in to buy, I don't know, a magazine or something, and while we're looking at the car, thinking, we're going to have a car like that, suddenly we heard, "Since my baby left, boom, boom, I found a new place," and then the guy got in and drove off. So we listened to the radio coming from Germany in those days, and one of my friends came around and said, "It's a guy called Elvis Presley, and the song is called Heartbreak Hotel." And I knew at that moment that that's what I wanted to be.
Wow.
I'd like, you know, I used to have dreams that I was Elvis. I didn't want to be like him. I was, and I'd wake up in the morning and go, "Oh, that's not true."
I think we all had that moment in the bedroom at some point, didn't we?
Doing the dance. We'll go from one artist to another band, because yesterday on the show we announced that next week we're going to be showing a film, the story behind the Beatles' very final track.
The
Now
Beatles?
and then, yes.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, you were friends with the band, weren't you, Sir Cliff?
Well,
through their song "Love Me Do," is it?
I have to tell you that the Shadows and I started 5 years before the Beatles, and therefore everybody thinks they own Abbey Road. I owned it. I merely rented it to them for a while, and they came up with all these fabulous songs and everything, and we did meet up. And the funny thing, James, I don't know if you can still remember who influenced you, but when we met the Beatles for the first time, it was just after "Please Please Me," their first #1, and we found out that they had been listening to the same people, Little Richard, Buddy Holly, Elvis Presley, and Paul had said that when he and John were writing songs together, they thought of themselves as the Everly Brothers, and John was Don, and Paul was Phil, because he had the higher voice.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, most of us really do come from the same
Yeah, yeah.
Not information.
It was...
We've checked, that's where it comes from. And I'm just hoping that the book will show that people like me and you, that we don't always make it on our own.
No, well, actually, just on that, making it in America. In the book, you talk about Devil Woman and about how a certain Elton John helped you break through there, because you hadn't had much success up until that point.
Yeah, I never made anything through them. And sometimes I have to bring it up and say that the record company in America, when The Minute You're Gone was #1 in England, they didn't want to release it. We played them Devil Woman, they didn't want it. We Don't Talk About It, they didn't want it. Elton comes and said, those songs, can I release them? And he got me into the top 10.
Elton knows people, doesn't he?
Sometimes it's a disappointment not to make it somewhere. But now, James, I can walk around, I do my own shopping. I go to supermarkets and things like that. Nobody spots me because they don't know who I am.
That is not true, no way.
Well, actually, James, you can testify to Elton John's kindness, can't you? Because didn't he surprise you on your birthday?
I'm more than that. Elton, he was the guy who signed me to his management firm. He was the first supporter. He took me on tour around the UK and around the States and around South America too. And without him, I wouldn't be here talking to you.
Yeah.
So he's done the same thing.
Been.
And yeah, he's occasionally called me on my birthday. You know, and dragged me down to a concert when I was alone in Denver, in fact, and sat me in the front. And it was my birthday exactly. He got the entire arena to sing Happy Birthday to me in the Elton John concert, which is
incredible. Cliff, I mean, the music that it had an effect on so many people who've been in touch tonight. Cliff saying we played For Life at my wedding in our first dance. Jonathan, I first heard the Millennium Prayer on my grand CD player when I was 5 years old. I still listen to it. I'm still a massive fan 30 years on. You've got a tour coming out. You're going to be in cinemas. You now have an album. And you've tried to choose, is it 12 tracks on the album that you remember, that you enjoy telling the stories about?
It was the record company's idea, and it's really nice to have a good record company that actually wants you to release records. And it was their idea that we should release these songs. They found, actually, most of the songs that I had recorded, they removed the band out and they put an orchestra beneath it. And only 2 songs, they didn't take the original recordings, but they found 2 live versions of Living Doll and Summer Holiday.
Summer Holiday.
And so therefore, and they became slightly jazzed. I was really quite thrilled. But my favourite song on the album is that Bryan Adams song, Everything I Do It For You. And I sang that live, and they used that and put the strings and stuff in there, and it still gives me goosebumps. I mean, amazing. I thought I was pretty terrific. You know what I mean?
Well,
we can confirm.
we can, certainly. Well, Sir Cliff, thank you very much. Your book, A Head Full of Music, the soundtrack to my life, is available now. And the album, Cliff with Strings, My Kind of Life, is out next Friday.
As I said, a very busy man. Now, if you've got a child in your life who's a budding writer or storyteller, listen up, because the BBC's 500 Words competition is back, and there are now just 2 weeks left to get entries in.
Yes. Right, James, actually, talking of younger people, you've been reflecting on your younger years for this album. Can you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, it's called Who We Used to Be. I suppose as a young man with a dream to get into the music business, I had, you know, lots of hopes and dreams and lots of questions. Where would I end up? Who would I meet? Where would I go? Those questions, in a way, have been answered. I've been in the business a little while now. And at the same time, I've got new questions. You know, my parents are getting a little older. I look after them to a degree. I need to think about looking after them. I have a family. I need to write songs for them. And those are the kind of big questions that I'm answering or asking on this new album.
Well, there's tracks about your wife in the album, and there's some dancey ones in there. So is this a new era for James Blunt?
I've been, well, you know, if you've met the girl of your dreams, you're going to write songs that are a celebration, that are deeper statements than just saying to someone, you're beautiful. I need to say something bigger than that. And I'm lucky enough to live in Ibiza, and maybe the dance scene is rubbing off on me a little.
It's a beautiful island.
Why not? It's a great track. You're going to be performing at the end of the show. The song's called The Girl Who Never Was. It's actually connected with a lot of people on social media. Explain a bit about it, because it's incredibly moving, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how many people can relate to the song. I think, you know, I'm married. We had aspirations to start a family, and you know, any young people or people in my situation who've gone through that, you know, you win some battles and you lose some, and the ones that we have lost, we struggle with a bit. And so I wrote a song called The Girl That Never Was. And really, the most amazing thing about it is putting it out and hearing the reaction from other people who relate. No, that was a long time before I met her, actually.
Well, let's not talk about that.
Well, let's think. People also know you for your wicked sense of humour, which you share in your new book and your new documentary, which is out in December. But actually, how much of it can we believe?
Yeah, I think none of it. It's called Loosely Based on a Made-Up Story, and it's a memoir from a man who's lost most of his memory because he's lived in Ibiza too long.
OK.
Yeah. OK. There's a story about proposing to your wife in there. Is all of that true?
I mean, yeah. I turned up, we went to Berlin, I turned up with an engagement ring, but I also turned up with a padlock, hoping to lock it onto a bridge, you know, a tunnel, and throw a key into the river, and I was very nervous. And she thought I was dumping her, rather than getting engaged, so it was not my finest moment, but she's still in.
So the idea is, with the documentary, is to look back at parts of your life, but it's like we're never quite sure if you're telling the truth or not.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think because I'd rather you... Yeah, I'm not sure how to explain it, really. I think what I've been told, really, is that everyone has a book in them. And I probably should have kept mine in me, and rather than actually putting out to the real world. But it's... but, yeah, my lawyer says I should deny any of it.
Just checking, all the memoirs are true. Cliff, you've not gone down the James Blunt route here. All the memoirs are true, factually correct.
Which ones?
The ones you've just done in your book.
Oh, the book. Oh, yeah. And I found out things that we didn't even know about. Like, people like Sam Cooke. Do you remember Sam Cooke?
Sam Cooke, wow.
He got shot by a woman who was the receptionist in the hotel he was staying at. She said he was behaving a little aggressively. And I'm thinking, he got shot, dead? And I found out things that all the people that we love and adore and think, some of them had really disastrous endings.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, that's a gear change there, Cliff. I mean, I was going on a lighter note, if I'm honest. James,
we did have messages coming in, but I was trying to get it up because Chloe says, actually, which is the one thing you'll enjoy, that you enjoy whilst performing live to the public, James?
Well, you know, I think really it's people singing the words back is the most amazing thing in the world, isn't it? Just in case I forget the words as well, that's very useful.
That's my thing.
And of course, 6 years in the army too, a time you talk about in the documentary.
Yeah, I mean, I've written a lot about it in the book, and I suppose the book is a weird conundrum of silly stories from the music business and serious stories from the army. And so, yeah, it's a bit of a kind of rollercoaster ride of what's a joke and what's really not.
Yeah, absolutely. Lovely to chat, James. I can't wait to find out if it's all true or not. We'll have to read it ourselves, won't we?
Well, you are going to be performing for us in just a moment, and James's new book, loosely based on a made-up story, is out now.
Yeah, so vague. Yeah. So vague, the title. Speaking of the armed forces, though, this is one of the most special times of the year as we lead up to Remembrance Day, a time
of my granny's uncles who both died in World War I, and I can't wait to get more information about them and get more pictures that I can upload to that website.
Yeah, and that digital portal is up and running. The digital portal, Angelica was talking about this, so you can share your memories now. Yeah,
you certainly can. And this year, poppies are a little bit different as they've gone plastic-free.
Yeah, they have this
Shall we read out some messages?
Yes, please.
OK, Cliff, this one's for you because Carol says, Cliff has been in my life since I was 5 when my mum took me to see the young ones. I'm now 66, looking forward to seeing him in Blackpool next month.
Oh, fantastic. What taste you have.
Ruth's saying I played Ocean Deep on repeat in my bedroom over a boy I fancy, but he didn't fancy me back. Oh, the innocent times. And then Nikki, just quickly, please can Cliff wish my mum, Christine, a happy birthday. She turned 80 this week and loves Cliff's to bits. Can you say happy birthday?
Christine, is it? Christine, happy birthday, darling, and you're still younger than me.
You're a lovely man. Thanks to all our guests tonight. Thank you so much to Cliff. Alex and Lauren will be back with a brilliant lineup on Monday on The One Show.
Yes, but now playing out with The Girl That Never Was from his album Who We Used to Be. It's James Blunt.
Darling, a little, but some things you just don't get to decide. The first casualty of life is the plan. Bright eyes, darling, we tried, but now it's the girl that never was. What kills me is you trying to take she's probably dancing with her block, and we had it all, and then we
She turned 80 this week and loves Cliffs to bits. Can you say happy birthday?
Christine, is it? Christine, happy birthday, darling, and you're still younger than me.
You're a lovely man.
Like ribbons on her shoulders, just like we always are. And bright eyes.
Thanks so much.